Hello, 8th. Welcome. It's Tuesday. There's a lot going on here, so let's make sure we have a clear understanding on everything. So we're going to review the textbook pages. Textbook page 722, number 1 through 7. We're going to do that right now. I'd like everybody to make sure to make the corrections, number wrong on the top. Post that image, add some extra details. Then I want to go into 25.2. It's almost like a little review. I'm going to add a little bit more. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that section because I have spent a lot of time on that material early on. So I'm going to go through that here too. So let's just do that together. We're going to have the questions with the corrections, the notes, post both, so several photographs on the first post, and then workbook page 121 in the cards. So it might seem like a lot. It's really not. It's less than we normally would do, or exactly equivalent to what we would do in class. And I've been a little lenient a couple days in the sense of time. You may have spent less than 45 minutes. So just plus and minus, guys. I'm being fair many times, but some days may be longer than others. So, but not making it longer than the regular day in school. So let's begin, guys. Page 722, number 1. So if you go to number 1, please put a star on number 1. You have Warren G. Harding. Warren G. Harding. He's the Republican president who urged a return to normalcy. He supported the expansion of businesses, and he unfortunately is known for this point. Some of his cabinet members were involved in scandals. Harding did, as you know, pass away in office. He was the president in 1921, so right after Woodrow Wilson, and he's elected to lead this nation. Unfortunately, though, throughout history, the scandals will override the majority of his legacy here. Did pass away in office. B, Teapot Dome scandal. B, it's a political scandal during President Harding's administration. President Harding's administration. Basically, if you connect it to Albert Fall is a cabinet official who was sent to prison for being involved in an oil bribery. So it's one of the most embarrassing scandals in history here connecting to the White House. Because what happens here with Albert Fall, he's Harding's Secretary of the Interior, and he illegally is leasing government land to oil executives, and in turn he is caught, sent to jail. But it also makes Harding look pretty weak because he's putting his friends in his cabinet, and his friends are not qualified for the positions that they've been given. So it does fall back on the president, the leader of the nation. C, Calvin Coolidge. You should have a star highlight these three. These are huge. Calvin Coolidge, he was a vice president under Harding. Okay, vice president under Harding. Takes over right after Harding does pass away. He becomes a Republican president, comes into office after Harding's death, and whose pro-business policies contributed to a period of prosperity. He was pro-business, and thanks to his pro-business viewpoint motto, he is able to move beyond these scandals, okay? That the administration of Harding, he wasn't a part of the, Coolidge wasn't a part of the scandals, but he was in the administration. So he wants to move the nation to move beyond that. And he's going to focus on economic growth, okay, to encourage production. Kellogg-Briand Pact. The Kellogg-Briand Pact is a 1928 treaty that outlaws war. 1928 treaty that outlaws war. If you remember, guys, you may remember Harding and Coolidge were big on peace efforts, especially right now, seeing the consequences and effects of World War I. After the Washington Conference in 1921, the U.S., Britain, and Japan agreed to limit the size of their navies. And 7 years later, the U.S. and 61 other nations agreed to this treaty, Kellogg-Briand Pact, which outlaws war. So focusing in on peace. Peace is your big word here to know. Peace is the big word here to know. Let's do two. I don't always do them more in the classroom, but let's just do this now really quickly. Okay, really quickly. So 2A, recession, it's an economic slump. Economic slump. B, installment buying. Installment buying, B, you can pull that up here too, is the following. It's buying on credit. It's buying on credit. It's encouraged to buy products you're buying on credit. So think of a credit card. When mom, dad, or guardian buys something on a credit card, they're not paying for it right there. They'll get a bill in the mail, and they're able to pay for it in different installments. Of course, there is a charge depending on the credit card that you may have. A certain percent you have to pay back each month if you don't pay it all at once, but it is buying on credit, installment buying. C, stock. Stock is something we've heard a lot about in the news the past few days, right? It's a share of ownership, to investors. That's what you need to know for stock. Bull market is probably the one that we don't all know out of the ones we've just reviewed. It's in, I should have it right here. A period of, right on the bottom, a period of increased stock trading or the rising of stock prices. So the rising of stock prices, rises of stock trading. You have communism. Communism, we want to put a star next to this one because of the impact it's going to have on history. It's an economic system in which all wealth and prosperity is owned by a community as a whole. Disarmament is basically exactly what it seems, okay? It's disarmament of weapons. It's a reduction of weapons. Many people came in favor of this. The arms race in Europe, you're aware of that. It helped. It was a major cause in World War I, especially with Germany. And for this reason, many people in the 1920s supported countries, those in Europe, United States, throughout the world, to reduce their armed forces and weapons of war. So to focus more on peace and to focus less on that violence, that tension, that escalation, in almost like we're building up for a war, like we're encouraging it. So Americans are majority want to pull away from that. Number 3, how did corruption hurt the Republicans during the 1920s? How did corruption hurt the Republicans during the 1920s? You may want to put a star next to that one. That's huge. Corruption caused embarrassment for Harding and may have even contributed to his death. Okay, it caused great embarrassment to Harding because it came into light. The scandals came into light, especially the Teapot Dome scandal, because while Harding did not do this, he did not do anything to our knowledge illegal, but he did appoint people who were not trustworthy and were not qualified for the position. He gave them position because they're his friends. But all of a sudden, what you have here is the person who made the move. You'll learn that in life, right? If you make a decision, you're the one who is blamed for that because he put them there. And especially the Teapot Dome scandal, you might want to jot that down. That's the one where Albert Fall leases land that's not even his. It belongs to the U.S. and allows for this drilling. So Albert Fall is making money off of land that's not even his, but he's being paid money to allow them to do it and to keep his mouth shut. So a negative impact, a very, very embarrassing impact on our nation. 4, how did Americans benefit from Coolidge prosperity? So how do we benefit from the prosperity during the Coolidge administration? Well, Coolidge, Vice President Coolidge, who becomes president after Harding's death, right? During this time, income goes up. So when people are making more money, they're able to spend more. So people making more money and more people are able to buy new products. Many people could also invest in the stock market, which was rising too at the time. So the industry had a rapid economic growth pretty quickly, which is essential during this time because many were unsure what to do right at the end of World War I. but there's more jobs, there's a greater income, and then you have buying on credit, which is, as I've said many times, the credit card system. If you think of how that works today, that will help you understand it. Next one. What role did most Americans in the 1920s think the United States should take in world affairs? What's the role the U.S. should take in world affairs? Well, we know Wilson, right? We know Wilson wanted that peace without victory. And in many ways, people were concerned with the United States being involved, so linked closely with European countries, because they were afraid that if there was a European conflict, they would be pulled in. But now you have the majority of Americans, agreeing to what I just said. They don't want to be pulled into conflict. So the majority of Americans believe the United States should stay out of world affairs. And the reason why they wanted them to stay out of world affairs and to disarm the army and various resources for war is so they don't create another war, another conflict. The last thing America would want, the majority of Americans would want, is to be involved in another conflict, another war. Main idea, as the Republican Party returned to power in the 1920s, the economic boomed. The economic boomed. Why did Calvin Coolidge make this statement? The business of America is business. The business of America is business. Well, this is because Coolidge believed that businesses help the nation grow, help the nation's economy grow specifically, okay? And with economic growth, if the economy is rising, okay, okay, people's income is rising, and their lives would improve because they would be able to buy more products to help during their lifetime. You're going to see a lot of new inventions during this time, refrigerator. You're going to see stove. You're going to see a lot of new inventions, a lot that we take for granted. So more people are open to buying new products, and it's making their life easier. So Coolidge believed that businesses help the nation's economy grow, and with economic growth, people's income would also increase and their lives would improve. During the 1920s, many Americans bought consumer goods on credit and stocks on margin. How would this make economic conditions worse after the economy began to slow down? Well, here's the thing. You go to the store, mom, dad, guardian, they swipe the credit card. They're going to have to pay for that, right? That's paying for it for the moment, but not really. You're going to get a bill in the mail, your statement, they're going to owe X amount of dollars. So let's say if consumer goods on credit and stocks, right, on margin, if the economy begins to slow down, think of right now, a lot of people are out of a job. Are they able to pay those bills? No, many individuals are struggling with the bills right now in 2020 because unexpectedly, they don't have a job. And that's happening for a lot of individuals right now. And if it wasn't for digital technology like this to teach, it would happen to me as well. And what's important to know is during those times, we cannot pay bills. So you may know somebody right now who's struggling with that because people can't pay their debt. That happened back then too. People were not be able to pay their debt. And just like what we see right now in the stock market, okay, people begin to lose money on investments that they made. In addition, people would be unable to buy new goods. So people right now, there's not a lot of spending. You'll notice there's a tremendous amount of sales online and things like that, clothing and whatnot, is because people are not buying a lot right now. And it's slowing the demand, and it's further damaging the economy then and right now as well. And you could see that very clearly. So do take a moment, jot down the specifics, number wrong on the top, and we'll move forward with the section notes. You can continue the section notes on the same sheet as last time. What I'd like to remind you of is workbook page 121. Please don't forget to follow the directions. Number 1, 2, and 3 could be bullets, few bullets for each. And 4 through 9, full sentence. Prohibition was. The suburbs are. Equal Rights Amendment was. So let's continue. So you can go ahead, leave a space if you want. This is going to be section 20. I might keep saying 24. It's 25.2, New Ways of Life. You know a little bit about this already, so I'm going to move fairly quickly. If anybody has any questions, let me know. There's a lot of great resources online too. What was prohibition on the left-hand side? What was prohibition on the left-hand side? You should know this. Prohibition begins in the 1920s. It's the ban on the manufacture, sale, and transportation of liquor in any state. So the entire United States, they couldn't manufacture, they couldn't sell, and they couldn't transport liquor. So supporters of prohibition are obviously thrilled, they're excited, they're overjoyed, and the 18th Amendment goes into effect. It's the ban on liquor, use of liquor in the United States. You may remember what I told you before when we studied this very, very deeply when we were studying the 18th and 19th Amendments, is that during this time, oh, Mr. A, it was everything was dry. Nobody was going ahead and having any liquor. Well, that's false. There's a lot of bootlegging. Bootlegging was the illegal manufacture, sale, and transportation of liquor. And it's unfortunately a way where people that didn't agree with this amendment went ahead and took action into their own hands and made illegal saloons. Okay. Many Americans, as you can see here, found ways to go around the law. So people would manufacture liquor in their own homes. They didn't agree with the law, so they're going to manufacture their own liquor. And smugglers would hide bottles in their boots. That's where the word bootlegger comes from, where you would have these tall boots and smugglers would hide bottles in them. Organized crime also increased. Organized crime took a great boost by providing liquor for every illegal speakeasy. A speakeasy is an illegal bar, basically. Sometimes they would go ahead and have these speakeasies in places where you least expect it. So it would almost be a front. So from the outside, it would look like let's say a bookstore. And then when you go in there, one of the cabinets may push back as it was a door and go into this bar, legal bar, which was a speakeasy. So people got around this in very, very creative ways. And you have a lot of organized crime because that was illegal to sell liquor, illegal to manufacture, and to have a speakeasy, which is almost a hidden bar. You have something from the outside that's not promoting liquor, but on the inside and fairly hidden pretty well, unless you wanted to get caught right in the front, you would have that speakeasy. As you know, 1933, President FDR, whom celebrated his birthday recently this week, he's president. The United States repeals the 18th Amendment, only amendment to be repealed. It's 21st Amendment that repeals the 18th. So if you look in your textbook in the back, Methuselah once asked a good question, how come the 18th is crossed off? Look in the back of your book if you have a moment. Okay, the 18th Amendment is crossed off because the 21st Amendment repeals and completely cancels that. So take a moment, do jot that down. So the 21st Amendment does repeal it. 1933, and what you have here is a fairly, as you can see, widely spread, unpopular amendment being overturned. So take a moment, jot down the information, as that will be essential moving forward. Okay, what was the 19th Amendment? What was the 19th Amendment? Another amendment that changed the American way of life, as you know, is the 19th Amendment. Women are now able to vote. It was ratified in 1920, and it gives women the right to vote, and the League of Women was set up to help educate the voters because women weren't able to vote before. So what happens now is you have this majority of women who now have the ability to go vote, but it's not just like, okay, guys, you can go vote. No, they want to educate voters as they do today. It worked to guarantee the rights of voters and the rights of women to also serve on juries. You may know, mom, dad, guardian may have been called to jury duty. Well, during that time, women now had the right, which they didn't have before, to go ahead and serve on juries. Women also served as delegates in the 1924 conventions for Republican and Democrats. And the first two women governors were elected. So you have two women governors elected during this time. And here's what you need. So soon, women served as delegates in both party conventions. So that would be Republicans and Democrats. So they're going to serve on both party conventions. You do need to know these two names. So either highlight or put a star next to them. Two women governors, Nellie Ross and Miriam A. Ferguson. Nellie Ross and Miriam A. Ferguson. They are women of the suffrage movement who also worked to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Equal Rights Amendment, they had an important, push for women to have equal rights as men. Ross is from Wyoming, and Ferguson is from Texas. You may want to take a moment and jot that down. So women are voting at the time, and women in Puerto Rico are also saying, can we vote as well? And they were not able to. They were not able to until 1929. So Puerto Rico was not able to go ahead and vote. Women in Puerto Rico were not able to vote until 1929. So the Equal Rights Amendment, it states equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by law on the account of sex. So gender, okay? So you cannot, right, under the law, you cannot be denied. Okay? You cannot be denied because of your gender. So these great leaders of the suffrage movement, Alice Paul, you may know that I've mentioned her so many times, guys. She was a leading figure during this moment in history. She pointed out that women still lacked many legal rights, okay? Many legal rights, because she felt professional schools were still not focusing on having women come in, especially higher education, colleges, and many states still gave husbands control over their wives' earnings. So women who were married did not have control over their earnings. Instead, those earnings had to be monitored by their husband. You can imagine that, right? Many people would fear, though, that the Equal Rights Amendment would go too far. But Alice Paul would live until 1977. And the amendment, though, unfortunately, even though because of her great efforts, is never actually ratified. But it does open doors, this push for equal rights for women everywhere then and impacts women today. So how did life change on the left-hand side? How did life change after World War I on the left-hand side? How did life change after World War I on the left-hand side? So life had changed a lot after World War I. Many women, or especially during too, many women worked outside of their homes. So women started to work outside of their homes, manufacturing in factories outside of their homes. Why? Because the men went to war to fight for this nation. So we needed people to fill those positions. So the women did that. That was only supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to only have women there until the men returned back. But then the men returned back, and you have many women who don't want to give up those jobs. So many of these women are remaining in these factories and working outside of their homes. And many also started to buy ready-made dresses. So think for girls listening to the lesson, do you make your own dress? Probably not, right? So that would have been rare at the time because usually women were the ones responsible for sewing clothing. So many would all of a sudden buy ready-made dresses, so buying a dress in the store and starting to focus more on their career. Washing machines and refrigerators made life a lot easier for women. So women who were generally seen through the eyes of men and individuals in society at the time as the ones who would take care of the cooking and the cleaning, in the sense of cleaning clothing as well. So this life at home suddenly changed. So women were not sewing as much clothing as they did in the past. Electric appliances, refrigerators, dishwashers, irons, vacuum cleaners made work easier for women. It was less time consuming. So they're spending less time at home and on housework and able to work more outside of the house. The only problem was when women came home from work, they were seen to be in their second shift. I've mentioned second shift to you before because they'd come home, they'd have to cook for their families, they'd have to clean, they have to care for children. And even if, let's say, they had this part-time job outside of the home, they'd come home and work, or full-time job outside the home, they'd come back and work this second shift. So it's almost as if they're doing double work. And the second shift is the cooking, the cleaning, the caring for their children in the home. Okay. Why was the automobile important on the left? Why was the automobile important on the left? Many of you can't imagine a world without cars, right? Ever since I've been alive, I've always seen cars on the road. You've always seen cars on the road. Your parents have always seen cars on the road. Your grandparents have. My first car, if you look it up online, I did, it was my grandmother's car, and I would drive it here and then to high school. It's a 1986 Chevy Celebrity. It's a light blue, like a sky blue. Take a look at that. See if that would be a cool car for you to drive. Take a moment and see that one. That's a really cool one. But that was the first one that I ever drove. The invention of the automobile impacts Americans very, very greatly in the 1920s. Car sales are going to grow rapidly, great thanks to this individual. Okay? Americans traveled to more places than ever before thanks to the automobile. Henry Ford. The Ford Company, many of you may have a vehicle, your parents, grandparents may have a vehicle, guardian vehicle that is made by Ford. Well, Henry Ford, great thanks to him, he's going to make the automobile more affordable to Americans. So here's what he's going to do here. You may remember Henry Ford. He introduces the assembly line, right? The assembly line in 1913 in his factory. Before, you may want to jot this down, before the assembly line, it took 14 hours to put together a Model T Ford, because you have one person put the car together from start to finish, generally by themselves or just a couple people. In the new factory system, the assembly line system, Ford's new factory, okay, they would assemble the one vehicle, the Model T Ford, in 93 minutes. So basically an hour and a half. So they used to take 14 hours when you have one or two people make the car all on their own, and they slowly do that each individually. Instead, he put people into different stations. You may remember the visual, okay? And the Model T would be built on an assembly line. So you have multiple people working on the car. Right now, the vehicle in your driveway is not made by one person. It's made by multiple people. So Ford is the first one to come up with this assembly line system. So if it used to take 14 hours to make the car, and now takes an hour and a half, roughly 93 minutes, you're spending a lot less time. You're producing more vehicles in a short amount of time. You're paying workers, he's not paying them less because he's still keeping them there the same amount of hours. They're just able to produce more. He's going to drop the cost of the car. Ford could have kept the cost up. He could have. But he saw that what he could do if he lowered the price. So from $850 to $290, imagine $290, right, for the car there on the bottom. Americans no longer needed to be rich to buy a car. $850 is a lot back then to spend on this vehicle because Americans have been traveling without a car for years. So car prices begin to fall because factories become more efficient. From $850 to $290, Ford, great thanks to the assembly line, is able to make the car more affordable to the average American. I think right now, the average American generally can afford your, car. Some more, better, more luxurious than ever, than others as well. But either way, the car is something we kind of take for granted. But great thanks to our friend Henry Ford here, who made it affordable for the average American. The low cost of cars, people were able to move to the suburbs. Okay, people were able to move outside, move to towns outside of the city, the suburbs. A suburb is a community located outside the city. With cars, people could drive to their job in the city, even though it was miles away. Well, you may have a parent or somebody you know who travels to, let's say, New York City every day for work. They may take the train, generally because of traffic. I know my uncle who lives next door to me takes the train because traffic, but he's also driven a few times. People are now able to drive to their jobs in a city, even though it was miles away. Before the automobile, I wouldn't have accepted a job in Trumbull if I lived in Greenwich. It only takes 30 minutes with a car, but how would I get there without the car? So now people are able to take jobs that are located outside of their city. Before the car, people would generally take jobs located simply in their city. So it becomes pretty interesting. The car is going to have a great economic effect, but also an effect on the suburbs as well. So what about entertainment on the left? What about entertainment on the left? So here's what we have. Many of you like to listen to the radio for music. You have many different choices, right? The radio becomes, this early radio. Early radio that you see here. Looks pretty cool. A lot different than the one we have today. Radio becomes very popular in the 1920s, not just for music, but television shows were broadcasted on the radio. Soap operas were broadcasted on the radio. More than 10 million families owned radio and listened to broadcasts. So news was on the radio. Instead of gathering around your TV, people would gather around the radio. You might say, Mr. Stray, why would they do that? It's because they didn't have television. So radio would be how you would hear. And you'd have to imagine what's happening during these moments. So you think of different television shows that were on the radio at the time. You really had to use your imagination because it was people in front of a microphone recording this show for you to listen to. So it did require a vast imagination. Of course, there was music as well, but eventually you're going to have the movies. Eventually, you're going to have the movies come into play. Okay, you're going to have movies that are called silent pictures. Silent pictures, no sound. The movies have no sound. They are black and white, and the pianist played music in the theater. So in the movie theater, the pianist would play music that went along with the action. So they were not able, guys, to have sound yet hooked up to the film. So movies have no sound, black and white, and A Trip to the Moon, 1903, is your first film that is made, 1903, Trip to the Moon. I'm going to show you, last year, it's unfortunate we have to do this, because last year, it's a 12-minute film. I had the kids just sit and watch it for 12 minutes and then react on it. So unfortunately, we're going to have to do this digitally the next couple days. But I really would like you to look into it and see how much film has evolved. Film, as you think, you could easily, let me record video of somebody. You couldn't do that back then. I'm going to show you something, and I love to show you this in person. But this is a film reel. This is a film canister This is where film was kept in, okay? This is a film canister from 1914. This canister is from 1914. And inside this canister, this is original, is a film. This is a film reel, okay? This is a film reel. And if you take a look, you are able to see the film come undone. And this is what they would use. And longer movies would require more than one of these, okay? Longer movies would require more than one of these. And you would have this film, which would have images that could be presented on the big screen. This here is a film from 1914. It's called Love Fangs from our great friend Charlie Chaplin. I did get this from someone a few years ago who donated to me for educational purposes. But it's Love Fangs with our great comedic friend Charlie Chaplin. And you'd have these film reels. They weren't available to have at home. They were in movie theaters only, and people would go there. Think of many of you maybe growing up liked to watch a television channel called Nickelodeon. You might like that television channel. Oh, I like Nickelodeon. Well, Nickelodeon, before it became a television channel, Nickelodeon was the name of basically a movie theater, because you'd pay a nickel and you get to see a new film. And now we have a great adventure into a new realm, a new world, never, ever seen or imagined before. Pretty cool, guys. I get excited with this unit. I know a lot about this unit. Let's talk more about it. Until next time, there's a lot more to go. We're going to talk a lot about film, and I'll post something pretty fun you can participate into. I'd like to see what's on your mind. Alrighty, take care and goodbye.